Okay, I think we can start. I will share the agenda. So good morning. This is the Gardener community meeting. Today we have only one topic. Georgi will show the new Gardener website and discuss next steps for documentation. If you have any additional topics, let me know. So Georgi, it's yours.
Thank you. Let me share the screen. You see it by now?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go full screen mode. Okay. I really try to keep it short and hopefully reserve minutes for the discussion, because getting some feedback back, or at least raising some points that we could discuss in future, is actually the highlight of this meeting. Sorry, I used the recent changes just as an excuse to start a discussion. But anyway, probably that might be also interesting to the audience as well. So kicking off, first of all, one new thing that we introduced kind of behind the scenes was that we now have analytics integrated into the website, so that we can study users' behavior, what's interesting, what's not so interesting. And the major idea here is to basically make informed decisions about future improvements. It's very important to know your users, because this whole endeavor, this whole site is actually serving the users at the end. And I hope that this tool is going to help us get some insight into how the website is used, and not only this, but also how our communication with the community is doing, and so on. Here is a few screenshots from what we have. Currently, there is not so much data because it was introduced like maybe a week ago or something. So it's still building up the data. But from here, you can see that we can track, for example, how normally users land on the site. Currently, there is a predominant source of users coming from organic search, mainly Google. Then some come directly with the URL, or by some other referral from another website, or by some social media like Twitter or something. Happy to see that the number of active users is growing. Everything started on 3rd of May, so basically this is a trend. Frankly, I'm a bit surprised by the large number of users, but I suppose it's not all unique users and stuff. We're going to study in more details how to make most sense of this data as we learn as we go. Probably one very interesting metric is going to be the most popular pages. And here we also already have some insight into this. Funny thing is that except obviously for the landing page, our tutorials are quite high ranked, which means that people very much use the site about learning how to do this or that. I don't know if you followed recently in the Gardener Slack channel, we also had a user that used our tutorials to learn about role-based access and service accounts. So he was happy to learn that generic topic for something concrete that we had written about using Helm, for example. So we also raise awareness and general Kubernetes knowledge along the main focus of the documentation on the site. I don't know if you see it currently. It's here it is on the right-hand side. Just probably more for your information. It's how we are widespread. I mean, where our users come from. I was also surprised that we are quite globally spread. You see where the gray areas are, but that's kind of expected. We have quite a good distribution geographically in terms of users. I'll stop now. I thought it might be beneficial if I did from time to time such a recap of how are we doing in terms of these metrics, in terms of community interaction. So I reserve like 10-minute slots from time to time on the community meetings to let you know, guys, how things are. Okay, you probably saw already the new landing page. It's being constructed around the usual patterns like why should I care in the hero section at the top, immediate getting started, call to action. There is a brand new news section just below that. Then we go to sections that basically explain what is it, and then some highlights about Gardener, and we end up again with some what's next, getting started, call for action, and the usual context in the future. So it's a pretty up-to-date design for a landing page. That is not to say that it's all fixed. There is a lot of things to improve and do there, and in the whole site in general. One major leftover that I'm actually currently working on, and I hope to be able to release very, very soon. That's the mobile experience with the website. Currently, it has been designed starting from desktop, and now I need to move the styles to mobile so that it can be viewed from any angle. Obviously, as we are tweeting and trying to increase our social presence as well, people are going to land most probably on the website from devices. So that's kind of very important. We are also working heavily on producing some kind of a promo movie that's going to appear besides the getting started. That's a really short 3 to maximum 5 minute insight into what is Gardener, what does it give me, how does it do it, and so on. So basically like a video version of the landing page. Another big thing, the documentation. It's if you've been to the site, you probably noticed that that is the one thing that did not change at all, and there was good reason for that. It's not that it's not going to change. It's just it's a big chunk that needs some serious planning and also some serious refactoring. So I decided to defer this for the second stage. And as I said, I'm planning quite some changes here. For example, I would like to change the top level structure in the documentation to make it look more similar to what you can find on Kubernetes IO documentation. You see here kind of a preview at the bottom. It's just a concept. It's still work in progress, but you get the idea. You have the home section that basically explains what you can find there, and probably contributors guide is link about it, and details about how to contribute are going to go there. Getting started guide, some section for the concepts that are currently can be found in the Gardener docs folder, but should be moved up as first class citizen in the documentation, I think. Then we have a guide section that's basically the format tutorials that's going to receive a serious upgrade. And probably finally some references about the API, the Garden, CTO, and so on. The guides are probably going to be the biggest, we receive the biggest change, at least the way I envision it. I'm planning to change the guides to a flat list, which is going to be able to be categorized with multiple categorizations instead of 1 or 2. And basically with a lot of different types of filters, like if you want to filter by category, you're going to see the different topics categorized in a tree-like manner, or if you want to sort them alphabetically, or if you want to sort them by publish dates, and that kind of stuff. Blocks. I really want to see some more activities on the blogging side on the blogging part of our site, and for that reason I really invested some time into bringing them up to a new level, and there is a lot more things to do there as well. So to facilitate, currently we have simply one big list of blocks. Some changes that happened, if you see on the lower right, some changes that happened is that currently you have a link to each block, so you can copy the link right beside the title. If you can copy the link, tweet it around. Actually, you can tweet it with one click just below the title, and things like that. What I want to see is some sort of better exploration patterns for the blocks, because currently we simply have one big list of blocks. Probably introduce some paging or with scroll review, as loading of the blocks as you scroll down, something like this. Definitely some filtering options, like to have some sort of like table of contents by months and years, or just be able to filter manually by month and year. Or if you click on the author to see the blocks by the author, just commodity patterns that you could expect if you land on such a site and want to explore blocks. As I mentioned, we have a new concept, that's news. That's kind of redundancy, news. But anyway, news are a new content type, very similar to blogs. Probably the only difference is that you can style them in any way you want, and probably will style them in many different ways depending on what kind of message the news has. And they appear on the landing page just below the hero section at the top of the site. If you click on, you see a highlight of the news in the center of the screen, like here in the screenshot on the left-hand side. You can copy the link to the news, so you can share it around and stuff like this. That said, they still are very similar to blogs, so I'm thinking about merging the two content types and basically introducing the features of the news into the blogs, so that we deal with only one content type that can, under certain circumstances, be presented on the landing page as news. So some features of the news are that you can schedule them. For example, you can specify publish date and archive date. So that's basically the period in which the news are going to be visible on the landing page. And after that period, they automatically are hidden and are available on the news lists, where you can basically see the whole news archive. To merge the two things, because probably not every single blog is necessary to be published as news, maybe we can introduce some front matter property that is going to mark it as eligible for showing on the landing page as news, like, I don't know, featured or something like this. And I'm planning also on increasing and improving the sharing options. Currently, we have only Twitter as an option, but I saw that we have quite some. The other big traffic in terms of social media comes from LinkedIn, so probably it makes sense also to add a LinkedIn button and improve also on this side. On the community and adoption side, I changed a little bit the community page to focus it on the different methods of how you can communicate with the team and basically enable interaction between the community in terms of different goals, whether you want to contribute, engage, or you want to adopt or do something. One important thing that we're currently heavily working on is producing some success stories, most likely in terms of blogs that we're going to publish. But ideally, I would like to see the known adopters attached to some success story that tells the community how Gardener is used in their use case, which is kind of additional context to what you can do with Gardener, besides the documentation, besides what you can see on the landing page, and it's generally an important topic. So currently we are working with our friends at PinkApp. You remember probably their session a couple of weeks ago. We are working on a blog from them. With TCP, we also have a couple of success stories that we would like to share. There is plan for a blog also with Schwarz IT, and generally everybody is welcome to contribute to the success story. I find this really helpful and super necessary. You probably saw that the adopter section is still not quite touched. I want to gather a couple of success stories and see how to form exactly this. Definitely we're going to extend the list. That's the easiest thing, but the more important thing is to really add more substance than just the lows. Search. I don't know if you know, but technically we're using Lunar Jessa, which is kind of client-side search. There is an index of everything that can be searched, one large chunk of JSON that Lunar Jessa is indexing and provides you the search capabilities that we currently have on the site. Obviously, the search is tailored to the look and feel of the previous theme, so that's something. So that's something that we'll need also to adhere to the new theme and probably be made more user-friendly. I have a topic about this at the end of the session, a couple of ideas that I want to share and see how you feel about these things. There is a lot of things that changed behind the scenes. I really cannot get into details into such a short section, in such a short section into this. I see I'm already beyond the time. But generally, right now you can simply download, simply clone the documentation repository. And if you have Docker enabled, you just can run make surf and you have the whole built infrastructure run for you together with a preview Whogo server, so that when you make changes to the documentation, you can live preview them. As soon as you save, you can navigate to localhost 1313 and see the changes, how they're going exactly to appear on the website. And there are a lot of improvements like this. The build images changed. Again, I cannot really, I need a separate session for this. And by the way, I plan to do such a separate session to explain how best to use all these things. And there is a lot of technical depth, of course, that needs to be cleared. Contributions. What I intend is to improve in terms of add some things to the contributors guide in terms of style guide, how to do this and that, revisit and produce more handy shortcodes, because currently it's a pain to work with, for example, with images, with URLs and stuff like this. So generally we are lacking there, and I think this could be improved. One thing which is more process oriented is I think it's a good idea to publish a list of guides that we want to form something like a documentation backlog, so that, for example, if somebody wants to lend a hand with the documentation, just go there, grab a topic, contribute, something like this. And with that, I'll close. And I wanted to bring up a few discussion topics with you. Of course, it's not a closed list, so guys, if you want to add to that, please jump up. But the things that came up to my mind while I was writing the presentation was, for example, we're kind of presenting our own blogging platform here. What I wonder is the technical barrier too high for the community to contribute blog posts? So far, I hadn't heard so, but speak up if there is another impression or you have ideas how to improve that. I was looking for example, for online editors, so that you have zero setup, so that you don't even need to clone the documentation repository and do stuff there. But wasn't really fascinated with the level of available editors that are on top of Whogo. But the community is working. Maybe they'll produce something better at some point of time. Also, would you see, I was wondering, should I put, for example, a tweets feed on the community page just to show also there what's going on? On the other hand, I'm not sure if that's not going to be too much noise, or you prefer a more simple look of the community page. I promised to come back to the search topic with the users that I've been discussing the way the current search works. Actually, quite many of them did not realize that the drop-down that appears when you search something is not search suggestions, but it's actually search hits. And many were accustomed that when they search for something, they will land rather on a search results page, which is just a different type of producing search. So I'm bringing this up also to the list of things. Also, there were some suggestions to create a dedicated documentation Slack channel for Gardener, something like Gardener Docs or something like this, not to confuse the topic too much with the Gardener. So I'm bringing this up to let you know and ask you if you think that's too much, that it's not going to be too active, or how we go about this. Another important for me suggestion was to consolidate the documentation that's currently widespread in the different repos in the Gardener into Gardener documentation and present it directly on the site. That would be an important change, and it will have impact on how we go about the design of the documentation as I'm approaching this point now. And generally, how do we improve on the documentation? Because a general problem is that I think we all agree we have a wonderful product. We have just somehow let the world know about it and all the cool features that we have. So we are lagging a little bit behind with the documentation, and we have to figure out some sensible process how to not lag too much behind and contribute to documentation with new development. And also, then there is the other side. Once you contribute it, to maintain it in future as well. And one last thing from my side is how about a suggestion to use the site for release notes? We could also make this first class citizen, like in the documentation, to have a dedicated section for release notes. I know we have the release notes in the in GitHub, but there basically you have a list of commits with commit messages. So I was thinking something more like they do it on Kubernetes on other projects, more in more narrative style, like to give a little bit more context on the more important changes that occurred and draw some attention to the release the way we want. That's from me, guys, and please jump in.
Hi, Gorgi. This is
Hi,
Vasu. Very nice, and thank you for driving this effort. It's really well received by everyone. I have, you asked the question about the entry barrier, and I see also Martin Vladev is asking the same thing. So I think we're all using Git to make changes and just changes. But then in order to preview, you kind of have to set up the system yourself on your laptop. And I actually did that a couple of days back. And it was a little bit of a hurdle. And I was wondering, can't we use something like Netlify, where your pull request gets automatically built? You get a deploy preview kind of environment, and that makes it very easy for you to see whether what you're suggesting actually looks like what you want to have. And then I totally like the idea about having an online editor, not for the tutorials or for the in-depth things. That should be with Git, but to edit something online and submit it somehow. And maybe the content, I mean, this capability we already have does not need to reside on our website, but it could be just a link to somebody else's repo or somewhere else, and it just gets rendered into our environment.
Okay, I don't know if you're able to see on the lower right, not sure. Is it visible or it's too narrow? Unfortunately, I haven't updated yet the README on the documentation, so there is no way to know it unless you went to Gardener website repository. The README there is updated, but I don't think it mentions this way to preview things. So just, I don't know if Svilen is with us, but just yesterday we were doing the release notes for 1.4, and he experienced it firsthand. So basically, you need to just to clone documentation repository, the documentation repository, run make serve, and then you get the preview on the site of the site.
Ah, okay. I was still running this Whogo Content.
Yeah,
and it didn't work for me.
It has some tips and tricks there to make it run, but because part of the job was to containerize everything. So basically now you run a container that's reproducible on any platform anywhere. It mounts the documentation repository as a volume, and then when you make changes to the documentation repository, it immediately senses them when you save them, and you can preview them locally on localhost 13, which is exposed.
That's so recursive. So we need a documentation about the documentation. Good.
Yeah, indeed. Could you give it a try these days and let me know how it works for you? And, but nevertheless, the suggestion for Netlify makes sense. And actually, these days I was looking exactly into them because I'd be happy to delegate as much as possible. The thing is, I still don't know too well their platform. Looks very nice. For example, Kima, I know the Kima project is using them, and they're quite fond of them. The only thing I'm cautious is about the additional layer that they give. If that's somehow a constraint for us, or it's actually helping. If it's helping, I'll be more than happy to move there.
Maybe Valentin can comment on that. He's from the Kima team.
I was about to jump in because actually we use it, and it's very useful, and also for reviewing and also for commenting. So when somebody creates a pull request and makes a change, it's very easy for anybody to see, okay, what is that change? I don't have to pull the whole repo. I click on the link, and then I can comment out and says, okay, on even testing, like we have now some changes on the blog pages, and I open my iPad and I see it's broken, and I write immediately down and say, hey guys, it's broken on the iPad, and things like this. And I think it's very useful. So we are using, they have an open source license, which actually is very useful. We exceed that license all the time, unfortunately, but we do have a huge build process which consumes a lot of minutes. I think Whogo will be way faster as a resource. So we use Gatsby and some React. So those are very heavy on the build part. But yeah, for us, Netlify actually works very nicely. If you guys need support, we have some couple of bots that we are using. It's actually quite decently straightforward. You can reach out to me and I can point you to the right people if you need support on that. But definitely, I would say it's worth it.
Perfect. Then I would say a good plan would be to recap most of the changes, and right as I have some capacity, I'll try to, by the way, I have an account there, just haven't had the time to explore it. I'll try to bring up the site there and get in touch with you guys to see how it works, to set it up, and maybe we can see it in parallel for some time and then hopefully completely switch to there. And are you, by the way, using some online editors, or how do you make changes?
This is something I'm new, so I joined the community team like this month, and I had the same question regarding online editor, because we would like to have more guests writing blogs on our platform. Right. We are using the same approach as you, so we run the blogs on our site. And I asked the same thing, and I mean, our developers were a little bit skeptical, because the moment you start doing that, your content is in another platform. It's not so open source, because most of those are kind of proprietary, if you would like to have I don't know, like a headless CMS approach. So they were kind of pushed back on that, but I'm also thinking of re-putting this on the table, because definitely the editor experience is a little bit better for, at least for guests. The developer is quite easy. You just push a markdown file, you create pull request and you preview it. It's actually decently okay, easy. So mixed worlds. I would prefer to have some sort of external service to allow guests to write a little bit easy the blog post.
I saw that they have open sourced their CMS, the Netlify CMS.
Exactly, there's a Netlify CMS too, yes.
Yeah. I saw there is some editor, but just haven't seen it in action. No opinion on that for now.
So I'm planning to reopen it and have the same discussion in our team.
Yeah. Okay, Vasu, I remember. Thank you. Vasu, I remember that you also said something about the remote pages and stuff. Actually, we have such functionality right now. So if you add to the front matter the property remote with the URL of this page that you want crawled and fused into the documentation, the build process is going to fetch it along with the component resources like images and stuff, and it's going to integrate it into the documentation.
I was just thinking it's, but even if you want to, fetch remote content, the way you get it into the documentation is via a Git change, right? And maybe having an online editor and making this process easier, like a CMS, would be somehow a nicer way to attract more and quick documentation updates. It doesn't work for everything. Yeah, I agree, but
absolutely, we need to invest there, I think.
Maybe I want to share on this one, Georgi, what we have basically on this pull request, because the documentation, it gets bigger and bigger in our site. We kind of separated we have different pipelines. So we can generate the preview only of the blogs without the documentation. And there's a preview of only the documentation, because the preview of the documentation can be quite heavy if it gets bigger. I don't know how it is with Whogo. So in our case, to be able to save on those minutes, we kind of have two pipelines. So when you write a blog, then we have a hook only on the blog and generates only the blog pages. And then documentation exactly the same. And community the same. So we kind of split them in separate area as our website got bigger.
Yeah. With Whogo, it's actually lightning fast. It's Whogo itself generates it like in seconds, maybe.
That's why I was thinking probably you guys have no issue with that.
Yeah, no issue for now. Actually, the biggest chunk of the build time for the website is us crawling the GitHub API for commits for the different pages, because this is the way we gather information of who contributed and who's the author, when was the last change, the email, and so on, the things that we display as supplementary data along the whole thing. Maybe we can improve also there somehow. But generally, currently the build runs up to 2 minutes or something like this, even with these things.
Yeah, we are using also a very strange system of tagging to get release automatically. The same, we are crawling the whole GitHub API to kind of figure out what's going to get into the next release based on the tag system that we are using in our issues.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the search, if it's okay to jump on that topic, because we are using this doc search Algolia, which is, it's nice, it's free for open source. But they are crawling your website, and basically they're indexing your website, and then you search and you get back results back to your website, so the links. I was just wondering, why are you guys using Lunar? I mean, I was thinking about that too, and I'm curious to hear the argument. Did you consider this Algolia? Have you seen any concerns there?
The actual reason was that basically the previous site was set up with Whogo theme that comes along with all the goodies, including search. And it happened that it was integrated with Lunar Jessa as probably the most lightweight way of search that you can get. I haven't compared the search results of the two, but I can imagine that probably the Algolia one is going to be more precise and better in that respect. I was exploring actually also things like, I didn't know it's free for open source. I thought it's a paid service, but that puts it into a different light for us as well. Now I was exploring Google Site Search, but it was deprecated. I think Elastic also have such a service very similar. Actually, they're taking over obviously the market from Google in that respect. Algolia was closest to what you might expect from an open source site, I think, but really not the best reference to give you some feedback about this, because I haven't explored it into detail.
Okay, I was thinking that maybe you guys seeing some challenges. It works quite well for us. It's a little bit of a and you delegate the whole indexing outside. So yeah, you lose a little bit of control of the index, but I think it's worked quite well for us.
Yeah. Do they give you some tuning options about the index, or it's completely blank?
No, it's completely magic. So that's a little bit. I mean, you can create sections, and then you can kind of say this has a priority of 1 or 2 or whatever. So you kind of at least per section. So if you have blog and you want to index the blog too, and you have a documentation, and you kind of want to make a search across the whole website, then you can say, okay, if it's in documentation, just push it up, and blog is last or something like that. But only very, very few tweaks. But they have stemming works, and it's quite auto suggestions, or sorry, even like grammatically incorrect. But we still get weird searches coming in from. The good part is that you get a very nice interface for basically what people are searching. So you get also the analytics part for free because of the open source part. So that's the interesting part. The analytics is it's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's worth to take a look and compare. I'm mostly worried about the correctness of the search results, but also I had this experience some time ago that while I was working on some of the pages, I marked them hidden, and this is one property that we support, so that you can hide them while they're work in progress, but that would never work if you don't own the index. I
haven't seen that if there is any option to. I think there is a couple of options to put a private, but only like pathwise. Cool. What about analytics? Are you guys using Google Analytics? I asked the question. Yep. Google Analytics, okay.
Yep, Google Analytics with Google Tag Manager. I set it up around 3rd of May. To be honest, I'm pretty new to the topic, so I'm still learning how to use it best. Maybe we can check this with you to see how are you doing this and compare the.
Actually, we are removing now the tag manager. To be honest, even now we are there's a pull request removing the tag manager because we noticed that actually brings no value. Okay. It works only for like marketing campaigns that you would like to share with other companies or whatever. But for us, was bringing absolutely no value and was just one layer on top of which was not needed. Yeah, so we are actually removing the tag manager. But feel free to reach out to me and I will be more than share. I think there's a little bit of a weird stuff with the views. The active users is a really big number there. It's almost bigger than the page.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised. I'm almost sure this is not real users, but as I said, I'm still learning and also how to make sense of the data.
Cool.
Hope we can get together and
yeah, feel free to reach up to me. Actually, I'm quite technical on that Google Analytics part, so I can.
Super. That's what I need. I will. Okay, and in terms of the other topics that were brought up, if somebody has an opinion, please jump in. If you have ideas, for example, what can we do to improve the documentation?
Hey, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. So regarding the Slack channel, I think I brought this topic up to you, Georgi. In general, it would be just nice to have some place to discuss documentation-specific issues or have a list of topics that would make sense for documentation, or just a place to gather some information. Is that Slack or any other platform? Yeah, I don't mind too much, but that would be the idea. So maybe, yeah, also maybe gathering issues. I'm not too sure about it, but just as an idea, because I feel like I'm not really sure where to post these questions or documentation related things?
Sure. Slack is super well suited for live collaboration as opposed to other means. Actually, if we start to get to become more active on the documentation, probably it's there's going to be a necessity also for such kind of support, because I constantly get requests and questions about how to do this or that in the documentation. So for me, Slack would be okay. It's up to you if it's also convenient for everyone else. I would go for it and see if it's lively enough, we can keep it. If it's not very active, maybe we don't need exactly Slack.
Yeah, we can ask the Kubernetes Slack admins if we can get another channel there.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I was not sure about, if we'll get the permission to do that.
I can ask them if you want.
Yeah,
Well,
please.
let's keep it in the Gardener main channel for now, and once we get enough traffic, we'll ask. I mean, we also need some traffic on the main channel.
Okay, that's also a point.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Ashwini. Georgi, just an idea for the PRs. Can we have something where we mark them as documentation relevant, especially for features which should?
Yes, actually, there is a label
that can
that's
help.
area documentation.
Okay, so do
Or
we act on that to update the documentation accordingly, or it's just there?
Currently, no, but what you actually, I see what you meant. When you introduce some feature or something to mark it relevant for documentation.
Yes, so that,
okay.
yeah, so that, and some, and we merge it at least with some action item that someone will work on it and close it, and that will reflect. Otherwise, just doing documentation on one fine day becomes a little tough than doing it while we are implementing the feature as well. Just an idea, I mean.
It's actually a wonderful idea. I've seen several ways to do this, by no means exhaustive list, but some guys put a checklist on their PRs, and documentation there is a checkbox that's mandatory. So basically the whole thing is accomplished when there is documentation. Others do it more asynchronously, like the PR needs a reference to an issue about documentation, which is tracked in parallel. But either way, there is some sort of raising awareness that this or that feature or change requires documentation, and it's traceable in this way. So either of these would be appropriate in my opinion, but it's up to the community to tell what would be applicable. There is no point to put documentation in the definition of done checklist of the pull request if nobody's going to actually stick to this.
I agree.
Personally, I think the least strain and yet still a lot of with a lot of traceability is part of the checklist to be a reference to an issue about documentation. Sometimes people are just blocked and just really need to shoot pull requests fast. So in order not to burden too much the whole thing, probably another issue that that can be traceable and is linked to this PR is sufficient. I don't know what you guys think.
I think that is better. And when we release Gardener, we can look at that PR and see if something is to be taken or spill it over to the next release. At least in the next release, we can close the documentation spillovers if there are any for the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
To avoid urgency, to not be a blocker.
Yep. Sounds good. So can we update the pull request templates with that? Something like a checklist for to add to the checklist a reference to an issue for documentation if it's eligible. I think we can, right? Okay, I'll try it. I'll ping them after the meeting the repository owners to ask them to do that.
We are trying now on the Kima actually projects, GitHub projects, and there is a overarching. So we have a project on top of the whole repo, and then we have some bots that kind of pick up the topics and they add them to the project pipeline like a Kanban board. But then it makes our life a little bit easier to track issues across repo in the organization. So then have them into one main view. So we are still at the beginning, but it seems that it works quite nicely. So
I'd be interested to see this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we have an army of bots just by tags, just put them up into the list.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious, more of a technical I added to the slash website and slash website generator. So the website is actually the raw HTML.
The produced output. Yes, the produced output.
Is there a reason you didn't use GH Pages or whatever the GitHub offers as a branch?
Yeah, that's what we are doing. Actually, the website is configured to be served by GitHub Pages. The docs folder inside the repo.
Okay.
That's how it has been configured. And the distinction itself, it's more to separate the life cycle of the evolution of the website from the output in the website itself, as we see it on GitHub Pages. That's the only reason.
Mm-hmm.
Same for the documentation part. We are linking the content. That's actually the input. That's the documentation repository. The content is separate just to keep it with a different life cycle. So you can, for example, make changes to the website generator itself without impacting somehow what's going on the other repositories.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, one of the challenges that we have a little bit in the confusion, because as we split it up the content, so we have documentation next to the code, and we have community in a site, and we have the website on the other side. If somebody sees an error and wants to make a pull request, they have no idea where to make a pull request. And this is something that we try to have like an edit button on some of the pages. At least when you are on the documentation, the edit gets you directly to the markdown file of that particular pieces. If you're on the blog or whatever. Because I jumped new and I said, okay, I seen where should I make a pull request now? So we have like 5 places where just, that's why I was asking, what's with another layer, but that's, nobody touches that. That's automatic, right? That's only just, okay. Cool.
I also plan to use only the documentation repository for tracking issues and stuff, because actually, almost nobody is going to contribute probably to the website generator itself, except me and probably a couple of other maintainers. But in general, like 99% of the changes will be in the documentation repository and people are going to look there. Okay, the discussion is super interesting for me, and also the feedback and the suggestions for help were very welcome. It's actually was a lot longer than I thought that it's going to be. I didn't expect that there is going to be too much of a discussion, so I'm super happy about this. Apologies for everybody that expected really a 15-minute session. That was really the intention. Sorry for that.
Okay, thank you, Georgi. Do we have any other questions or comments or any other topics?
Maybe one last thing from me, because there are a lot of things brought up and we didn't have the time to finish them all. Please get in touch via the Garana Slack channel. I'm monitoring it, so we can continue there.
Okay, and of course we can also continue the discussion in one of the next meetings.
Absolutely, we should focus on some topic. Yeah.
Okay, then I think we're done for today. Bye-bye and see you next time.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.